This little dog was chained up by our owner when a terrible flood was about to happen. The dog was chained in the middle of the storm. Did the dog survive? Why would the owner tie up the puppy knowing what was to come?
Before we begin, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos.
Nobody can avoid natural disasters, and although they're part of our life on planet Earth, they're horrible for human survival. However, there are creatures that have more problems than us in these situations, the domestic animals. It's not uncommon for countless dogs and cats to lose their lives to heavy rains or floods, for example. But is this the story of our protagonist today? Samantha and Joy were an ordinary couple. However, they were always fighting. The two had lived together for a little over 2 years, but everyone knew that relationship wouldn't last much longer than that. Joy hated animals, especially dogs. So, after a nasty fight between the two of them, Samantha knew exactly what to do to piss him off. So, she left in the morning and only came back in the late afternoon, and she had a little gift for him, this beautiful little dog. The woman even liked dogs, but not enough. Well, you can imagine the story didn't end well. Joy was furious, and the two argued even more. It was unbelievable how much they didn't get along. The woman thought the puppy was very cute, and it even stayed indoors for the first few months. But unfortunately, for the little dog, it grew up, and so, all the magic ended. The dog that hadn't even been named was sent to the yard, and Samantha and her husband reconciled, but the poor animal lost a lot in that. The dog barked to get in on cold days, but Samantha just tied her up with a chain and threw in some old sheets so the animal would stay alive. This situation was a total disregard, but no one did anything to help. Enter the little dog's misfortune. A terrible thing was about to happen. The couple lived in Houston, Texas, and in 2016, there was a large sequence of storms going on. Everyone in the region was worried, but hopeful that everything would be resolved soon. However, that wasn't what happened. After being sure that the situation would not improve, people were advised to leave until the rain stopped, and that's what they did. On the same day, Samantha and Joy prepared to leave town. The couple took the dog from the yard and locked her in the front of the house. The couple packed the things so they could take inside the car, and as usual, they started to fight for no reason. At some point during the discussion, they got in the car and left, but Samantha had forgotten one very important thing. The little dog was chained in front of the house like it was nothing, under heavy rain, and the chances of her surviving were minimal. She waited for a while, but it was clear they wouldn't come back for her, or even remember her. The dog started to cry, but there was no one to hear. She tried to break free to seek shelter, but she was too weak to do so, as the years of neglect had left her without strength. Would the fragile animal make it out of this predicament alive? The prediction was right. The rains did not stop, and the water began to rise. Luckily, there were no people there, except for a team from a television station that needed to record the images. However, it wasn't a good idea. The waters rose a lot, so they had to call the authorities to get them out of there with a canoe. They didn't know yet, but they weren't the only ones there fighting for their lives. Sheriff Troy Nels and his team rescued the report. The team continued in the canoe in search of people who might be lost. After a few minutes of roaming around in the place, they came across a terrible and unexpected situation. From a distance, they saw two little eyes that were above the water level. Automatically, they knew they needed to help. As they got a little closer, they were curious, as they didn't know exactly what it was. They went towards the animal and realized it was a dog. The animal was overjoyed to see them, but it was clearly in shock. The water was up to his neck and almost covered his snout. No one knew how long that animal had been in the water and how it had so much willpower to keep fighting for its life. They called the dog to swim towards them, but it just remained still. No one understood that the crew thought the dog was just being loyal to the owner, but it wasn't anything like that. They got close enough to rescue it, but as they pulled the animal into the canoe, they realized something terrible. It was actually a little dog, and she was on a chain. It was unbelievable. Everyone was outraged, looking at that horrifying scene. Everyone on board wondered who could have done such a bad thing with that little animal. But at that moment, it didn't matter. The little dog was saved from the flood, and everyone was very emotional. But contrary to what you're probably thinking, unfortunately, she wasn't the only animal that was in need of help at that moment. The little dog was given a blanket and cuddled at the feet of the sheriff, who liked her from the very beginning. They continued with the search and found 3 more dogs that were on top of a bench. They were all fine, but Troy couldn't take the image of the dog's eyes asking for help out of his head. So, he made a big decision. Whoever committed that terrible act couldn't be punished for lack of evidence, but for the sheriff, it didn't matter, because he decided that he'd give a home to that little dog, who was named Hope. The other dogs went to a trusted shelter, where they were sure to be adopted quickly. Troy spoke about the case and said, "The only thing we could see was her head above water, and I felt so sorry for her." The crew pulled the boat as close as possible, got into the water up to their waist, and approached carefully. That's when they realized why she couldn't swim, as Hope was chained and abandoned soon after. After everything was over, the sheriff took his new friend Hope quickly to a veterinary clinic to tend to her injuries and possible pneumonia. Hope took a hot shower, and immediately after that, she looked much better because she was happy and couldn't stop wagging her tail for a single minute. She was a very docile dog and seemed to know who her savior was. The film crew that was with him lost some equipment and a lot of recordings too, but they got some footage of the moment. The sheriff was very excited and happy to be able to provide Hope with a home as loving and caring as possible. A report aired to tell the story of this little dog, and everyone in the region was grateful to the sheriff for having managed to save the life of Hope and 3 other dogs. Hope was chained in despite everyone knowing that it was a terrible crime. Those responsible never confessed or even returned to their old house, which remains abandoned to this day. It's very sad that the little dog Hope had to go through all this to only then have a real and someone who would take care of her as she deserves. A few months have passed, and Hope doesn't even look the same anymore. Now she eats well, goes to the vet regularly, and takes daily walks. She's living a great life with people who want her around now. No one can deny that Hope is the darling of Sheriff Troy's family. Do you think Brazil's laws should be strict about the abandonment of animals? Tell us here in the comments.